Julie, thanks so much for coming on the program. Good to see you once again.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. All right, listen, I've got so many stories here, so many lunch-related stories.
My favorite topic.
Let's start. Mine too, particularly when we tend to tape this right before lunch, so I'm always starving whenever I talk
true.
with you.
Me too.
I know. Yeah, what are you going to do? So the Gazette, which is a newspaper in Iowa, talking about the closing. I got to thank Cameron Gray for sending me this link. The Kelowna Cheese Factory is closing in Iowa. So no more will you get squeaky cheese, the cheese curds there, because our government is protecting us from ourselves here.
Yeah, and apparently it's not because of safety reasons. They just cannot comply with this avalanche of regulations coming out from Washington. And so rather than, try to, at least question the regulations, hit back on the regulations or challenge them, they're just going to close shop. And it's really sad. And this is the thing I've written before. The FDA has been very active this last few years, regulations on trans fats, on salt, on sugar, on certain other things. And this hits small producers much harder. When the FDA threatens food manufacturers with voluntary guidelines, and let me just be clear, voluntary guidelines in Washington is comply or else. And so, the whole idea, they often say, well, they're just voluntary, which means if you don't comply with them, they'll go along with actually much more rigorous regulations. So when the FDA threatens these kinds of regulations, the big companies that have these, floors of lawyers and all of these people on retainer, compliance officers, it's not hard for them to comply with this. It's very hard on small producers, mom and pop shops, local farmers. This is who we're going to put out of business. So what I find interesting is a lot of sort of food nannies are telling Americans, oh, you should really, eat local and, support local, which that's great. Supporting local manufacturers and smaller businesses is great. But it's the actual, it's the sort of regulations that are promoted by liberals that are actually going to put these businesses under.
Absolutely. And, look, you talk about the small companies. This is 50 employees.
Right.
And as you say, they just could not, they didn't have the capital to spend on these enhanced, and I want to make sure, let's see, from advanced food safety and quality assurance requirements to more stringent environmental regulations that would require substantial capital investment. Gary Weiss, the president of Proliant Dairy Ingredients. As a result of the change in environment, we've decided to close the Kelowna facility. It's a difficult decision. We'll continue to explore other opportunities for the facility. And, you got customers here. Denise Easley of Cedar Rapids said, my kids grew up on these darn things. Yeah. My kids grew up on these darn things, Julie. They've been eating them for 25 years, she said. You drive to Kelowna to get the cheese curds. It's just tradition. Well, you can't have that tradition because, the powers that be, our betters have decided that this tradition is a bad thing. Now, listen, it's interesting because the betters have also decided that our kids must eat these school lunches that our kids apparently don't really want to eat. I don't know if you saw the story from, do you read the Cleburne, Alabama News?
I think I missed that one. I think I might have missed that one.
I understand. It's hard to get. It's kind of I don't want to say it's an indie, but only the cool kids know
But if I
about
could just
it.
add one more thing, if Cameron Gray didn't send me some of these articles too, he is awesome at finding these very random articles. So cheers to Cameron Gray on finding a lot of this stuff.
Because Cameron is, people don't realize that Cameron is like 98% towards the singularity. At some point, he actually will fuse and become one with the machine. Right. And it's going to be fantastic for show prep, I have to say. It's a quantum leap forward. No, Cameron is amazing. The Cleburne News. Now, I found this one all by myself.
Oh, okay,
Julie.
sorry.
But the Cleburne News, Alabama school lunches attracting, I can still do it. I mean, I'm not one of those, vapid talking pieces of meat that don't know how to work a computer. I can on occasion still find a story.
Got it.
Anyway. That's why this program is the best, because we have the most amazing producer. We have a host who can also find stories. This is why it's the best show around.
And
anyway,
awesome guests.
Alabama school lunches attract, and yes, can't forget the guests. Particularly when they show up on time, too. They're
Sorry,
amazing.
Little late for the
It's all
audience,
right.
and he's going to torture me a little bit.
Parking, you
Yeah,
know?
it's okay.
I
Let's
understand.
move on.
Alabama school lunches attract fewer customers, quote unquote.
Right.
And as it turns out, the lunch program in the Cleburne County schools has seen a 29% decrease, Julie,
Yeah.
in student participation since the Alabama Department of Education tightened nutritional requirements. There is no difference in the free or reduced price lunches, said Superintendent Claire Dryden, just in the amount of paid lunches. The story goes on to talk about lines at the drive-thru at McDonald's after school because parents are picking up their kids. They're still hungry.
Right.
So guess what? Guess what? All of you food scolds, you are sending kids to McDonald's now. Do you feel good
Yeah.
about yourselves? Or do you feel proud for this?
Yeah.
Give yourselves a pat on the back.
I'm starting to wonder if actually Michelle Obama is against school lunches. And this is all, maybe she's on our side. She thinks parents, unfortunately, they're not taking a greater role. But maybe this was all designed to drive kids, to put the school lunch program out of business because she is doing an excellent job. She really is. Nationwide, kids are opting out of the school lunch program. It just isn't good. And this is what I want to make clear. It's not the food nannies on the left will tell you it's because the meals are healthier. It's not that. And I think it's really important that people understand that part of these guidelines were not only to make the food healthier, but they took away flavorings like cheese and butter and salt. There are so many things that the school lunch ladies, as they're sort of known, cannot add to the food to make them taste good. I go to lunch all the time. I go to the school cafeteria with my sons. I obviously pack my kids a lunch, but I sometimes have lunch with them, and I look at the food on these poor kids' trays, and it'll be some sort of grim-looking sandwich, and then plain brown rice, boiled brown rice. There isn't salt on it. There isn't butter on it. And then, some sort of vegetable, again, that has nothing on it. Now, I'm an adult and I don't like to eat that way. It might be good for me, but I'm not going to eat plain brown rice and plain broccoli, okay? So kids aren't stupid. So I want to make the point that, the left and these food nannies might be saying, well, it's just because it's healthy food and Americans never eat healthy food and the kids aren't familiar with it. No. It's because school lunch ladies have had their hands tied. They cannot make this food taste good. They're regulated so closely that they can't do anything. So I think that's important. But again, I'm kind of happy to see the roles reduced here. I wish kids weren't heading straight to the convenience store or to McDonald's. I wish parents would take a greater role, but unfortunately, the Obama administration never made encouraging parents to pack their kids a lunch a part of this effort. It was totally secondary. You should just, put your kids in the school's care.
Right, and that's the thing. I would say, look, if you're going to be driving your kid through the drive-thru after school, maybe pack them a lunch at that point.
Try it.
Recognize that, okay, the school lunch isn't getting it done. I'll go ahead and take the 10 minutes it takes to pack a lunch in the morning or the night before. And that way I don't have to go through the drive-thru at McDonald's every afternoon. All right, and to that end, you talk about the food, the way it is prepared and the way it is served. I found this story as well from Channel 5 in Cleveland, Ohio. And I find it fascinating that local media outlets are picking up on this as a local media story. How many local school districts are in a typical TV market? That's how many stories there are about how the school lunch program is affecting kids. So the TV networks have figured out how to localize this story, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because I think it means we're going to see a lot more of these stories.
Right.
But Channel 5 in Cleveland talks about the waste in the federal school lunch program.
Yeah.
They point to National School Nutrition Association, a study performed by researchers at Cornell University, Brigham Young University, suggests some $4 million a day in food is being thrown away. USDA says that nearly 60% of fresh vegetables and 40% of fresh fruit are being thrown away in our schools.
Yeah.
You have a Jenny Lang, school nutritionist, member of the Ohio School Nutrition Association, says, quote, the concept is just wonderful. But in fact, if a student is only going to take it and then discard it, then it's going to waste. She says, we're seeing a trend where meal counts are going down just because students aren't accepting all of the changes that are taking place. There are fewer students eating.
Yep.
And so, it's fascinating. It's almost like this battle of wills right now. And in some cases, this administration is treating not just students as children, but their parents as children. And you won't get up from this table until you eat your veggies. This is what you will eat for dinner.
Right.
Meanwhile, you've got, in some cases, adolescents, in some cases, adults here who say, no, 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 that's not your choice. You're now telling us how to live our lives. You're trying to protect us from ourselves. That's not your job.
Yeah, I'd like to know where the environmentalists are on this subject. I mean, Michelle Obama has overseen one of the largest food waste problems in our country through schools. In the history of the school lunch program, there's probably never been this much waste. GAO has reported waste is at a terribly high level, and so. Food waste usually is something that that you get the Greens all worked up about, and yet they're awfully silent about this. That is the reason that you're seeing some schools, like LA County schools, make arrangements with local homeless shelters and soup kitchens to give the food to these homeless shelters because nobody's eating it at the school. Look.
You mentioned LA, Julie. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Cleveland has a little anecdote about the LA Unified School District. They say it estimates it's losing a $100,000 a day. Just the LA Unified School District losing $100,000 a day in wasted food.
I mean, we really need to take a look at the school lunch program and not do these small incremental changes or pump more money into it. It is time. And, again, Michelle Obama has sort of portrayed herself as the only, sort of the patron saint of the school lunch program. She's not the only one who's tried to reform it. It is impervious to years of attempts at reform. This is a broken, massive entitlement program. You need to scrap the program and start new, real innovative changes to it. IWF, I'll talk about this next week. IWF has a new book coming out and called Lean Together. And I wrote chapter 7 where I talk about some really interesting changes that have happened across the country where privatization is starting to sort of, get into the program. Schools are opting out of the federal program and they're creating their own program. They're inviting restaurants to come in. A lot of private schools, actually, a private school one of my children goes to, they actually don't have any kind of school lunch program. They have no facilities on at the school to make meals. And what they do is they have different restaurants deliver for all the kids. I mean, this is a great arrangement. The school makes money. These restaurants make money. And the food is a lot more palatable. The kids love it. And frankly, it's healthier. So I think we really need to take an opportunity here. Congress really needs to take an opportunity. Hopefully, when things turn over, Congress will make some real innovative changes, not just pumping more money into it and trying to get more kids involved in it.
I'll tell you what. I'm reading Craig Shirley's book about the 1980 presidential campaign with Ronald Reagan right now, and I tell you, this to me seems like an issue that Reagan would have embraced and run on. It seems like a very Reagan-esque issue in that it hits people in their pocketbooks. It hits people at their dinner table. You're talking about the erosion of your ability as a parent to decide what's right for your kids. You're talking about the inattention being paid to the important things in school and these mandates that are nothing more than again, wasteful boondoggles with our tax dollars that are literally being thrown in the garbage. This is an issue I think that I would love to see candidates talk about this, not just as an issue in itself, but in terms of the broader issues that this represents.
I totally agree with you. And I think, someone made a really interesting point I saw on Facebook. They said, there's sort of the Radley Balco Republicans or conservatives that are concerned about the militarization of the police. And that's made people sort of shift more to the libertarian side. And then he talked about this sort of Lenore Skenazy type of small government types who are concerned about the increasing criminalization of parenting, government control over things that parents should be in control over. I mean, I think Republicans and I think, conservatives in general could really run with this kind of, the idea that government has become more and more involved in the minutia of our life, the very small details of our life. It's a perfect place for Republicans really to campaign on and to run with.
Well, once again, we're going to close on a note of agreement.
So
sorry,
bored.
I suppose at some point we should have a yelling, screaming match.
Yeah, occasionally.
But, whatever. Occasionally, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right, listen, you have a fantastic week. I'm going to go eat some lunch.
Me too.
I suggest you do the same. And hopefully we'll get to do that together sometime soon.
Hopefully. Thanks for having me on.